Slide 1. The nature of science and the origins of the ocean, Topic 02b, Part 1, The nature of science. In this unit, we will discuss how science works, and then illustrate these ideas by going over ideas about origins, where things come from, that scientists have developed. I hope that you will see that these ideas are based on real evidence and rational deductions, not mere speculation. Slide 2. Whether you realize it or not, you apply the so-called scientific method every day in your life. Scientists try to figure out how the world works, what has happened in the past, and what will happen in the future, and we try to do the same in our lives. For example, suppose you wonder, do they like me, in a romantic sense? This is a question that I think most of us have dealt with at one time or another, and we certainly have seen people address it on TV, in books, and so on. Typically my students tell me that they answer the question by looking at things like eye contact and body language. For example, if you go up to the person and talk to them, and they smile and help keep the conversation going, then most people will think things are going well. However, this all depends upon your interpretation. Perhaps they are just being polite. Some people are just naturally bubbly or giggly, and it has nothing to do with you. If you look at them, and they look back at you and smile, that may be good, but it may also mean that you are funny looking. Perhaps you have something on your face. Similarly, if they look away, it may have more to do with them being shy than your appearance. These behaviors and reasoning are very similar to what scientists do. Scientists begin with some ideas and wonder whether they might be true. Do they like me? They conduct experiments or tests, go talk to the person, pass them a note, look at them. The experiments or tests give them some evidence to go on. The person smiles, frowns, laughs, continues the conversation, looks away. The scientist then interprets the evidence, tries to figure out what it means. As I indicated above, it is not always clear what the correct interpretation is. If I go up to someone, start a conversation, and they look away and do not help continue the conversation, it does not necessarily mean that they is not interested, it may mean they are shy or busy. Thus, scientists believe that the best beliefs are those which are based on lots of different kinds of evidence, all pointing in the same direction. If all you know is that they laugh at your jokes, you have little evidence to support the idea that they like me. If they laugh at your jokes, makes eye contact across the room, start a conversation with you, volunteer their phone number, and so on, then you have lots of evidence and reason to believe that they like me. Slide 3. Scientific evidence. Think of a jury in a trial. They are told to decide whether or not someone is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt based on the evidence presented to them. Sometimes, it is not the amount of evidence, but the kind of evidence that convinces them of the correct verdict. For example, which would you find more convincing, an eyewitness description of the events or seeing the events on a videotape? Which is more likely to convince you that a person made a phone call to discuss the crime, the phone company's records of a call being made or a tape of the conversation? Which would make you confident that someone had handled the murder weapon, a police officer testifying that it was found in their car or the defendant's fingerprints on the weapon? Which provides the most convincing evidence that the victim and the defendant got into a fight, reports of yelling in the apartment or the DNA of the defendant under the victim's fingernails? In each case, I expect you to tell me that the physical evidence is stronger, the videotape, the phone recording, fingerprints, DNA. What makes physical evidence better is that you can see it for yourself, hear it for yourself. You don't have to take anyone's word for it. You don't have to trust them or take it on faith. It always makes me think of the old saying, seeing is believing. You may object that you do not actually see the fingerprints or DNA for yourself, that you have to take some expert's claim that they match the defendant, and were handled properly. Here is the difference: if you have any concerns, the expert can show you why they think that the DNA and fingerprints match. You can look at the fingerprints yourself, comparing them to the defendant's and other people's fingerprints. They can print out and show you the DNA sequence. In principle, you yourself could learn to conduct a DNA analysis to make sure that they follow the correct procedure. In science, only observational evidence, physical evidence, is the basis of belief. Observations are things that you see, hear, touch, taste, and smell, things that you can measure and examine for yourself without having to take anyone's word for it. This is not to say that other kinds of evidence like someone describing what they saw or did is not true, only that you cannot verify it for yourself. People have internal experiences of love or enlightenment, but other people cannot check what someone else is feeling. The feelings or internal experiences are not wrong or false or irrelevant. We just have no way to confirm it ourselves, and thus they cannot be used as part of doing science. For example, some people claim to see auras and can use special crystals to heal you. I cannot see auras, so I am a bit skeptical. This does not mean that auras do not exist, just that I do not personally have a good reason for believing in them, yet. However, if I feel better after being treated by crystal therapy based on what a practitioner tells me about my aura, I have real observational evidence, my own experience, which gives some support to the idea, even though I cannot see the auras. So, scientists can and do believe in things they cannot see. However, they believe in invisible things like gravity and infrared electromagnetic waves and X-rays based on things that they can see. For example, studying the motion of objects has been used to deduce how gravity works. Slide 4. Observations do not change, but beliefs about what the observations mean may change. I need to emphasize that your observations do not change, unlike your beliefs, because they are associated with particular places and times. If you saw someone smile at you, then they smiled at you. Even if they do not smile at you later on, they cannot unsmile that first smile. If you saw someone wear a red shirt on Monday, then seeing them wearing a blue shirt on Tuesday does not change the observation that they wore a red shirt on Monday. If you hear someone say mean things about you, no matter how much they tell you that they were kidding or didn't mean it, they still said what they said. Observations do not change, but your interpretation of the observations may change. In other words, it is your beliefs about what the observations mean that changes, not the observations themselves. You may initially believe that someone's smile means that they like you, and later learn that they think that you are funny looking. The observation of a smile remains the same, but your interpretation of the observation, your belief about what the observation means has changed. When you first hear someone say mean things about you, you may get angry, but later learn that they were talking about someone else with the same first name. Your observation, what you heard, has not changed, but what it indicates to you has changed. Repeatable experiments. Students often tell me that experiments must be repeatable to constitute scientific evidence. This is true, but students often misunderstand the reason why. They think that the more times an experiment is repeated and the same observation is made, the stronger the evidence. I disagree, you are not really building up more and more evidence. After all, you're seeing the same thing happen again. Nothing new is being added to our knowledge. Repeatability is actually important because it means other scientists can see it for themselves, can check the work of others. Slide 5. Hypotheses and theories. Scientists use the word theory differently than most people use the word theory in everyday language. When most people use the word theory, they are trying to say that they have a guess or just an idea about why something happened or what will happen next. When scientists use the word theory formally in presentations and scientific papers, their use of the word theory indicates that they are confident that the idea is right, because there is a lot of evidence which supports it. Scientists use the word hypothesis to describe an educated guess, an idea that is based on a little evidence. A scientist with a hunch will say their idea is just a hypothesis. Unlike observations, hypotheses and theories can change or be shown to be wrong. For example, if new evidence is found showing that a prisoner did not commit a crime, then our theory that they committed the crime is wrong. We should embrace the new theory that they are innocent, and they should be released. Like a jury, scientists try to come to the best conclusion they can based on the evidence available to them at the time, but if they do not have all the evidence, they can make mistakes, just like everyone else. The famous physicist Richard Feynman once said science is imagination in a straitjacket, because scientific beliefs are limited by the observational evidence. Typically, scientists will propose explanations based on a little evidence, hypotheses, and then perform tests, do experiments, go on expeditions, and so forth to gather more observations. Depending upon what they observe, they will become more confident that their hypothesis is true, perhaps upgrading it to a theory, find that they need to change or modify their hypothesis, or decide that their hypothesis is completely wrong, and they need to start over with a new idea. In any case, scientists' beliefs must be guided by the observations. Sometimes drug companies only publish research findings that made their drugs look good. This is being very unscientific. You have to take all the observations into account when formulating a theory. You cannot simply ignore observations which are inconvenient for your beliefs or preferences. This is called cherry-picking the data, and leads to incorrect beliefs. In the case of medicines and medical care, at best it leads to wasted time and money for patients and doctors, and at worst can hurt people and even result in them dying. Some people proudly proclaim that their beliefs have never changed, that they have the courage of their convictions, suggesting that inconsistency is a bad thing, flip-flopping. The implication is that if a person has changed their mind once, then they might change their mind again, that they do not really believe in anything. These people are being rather unscientific. There can be good reasons to change your mind. People who can look at the evidence, admit that they were wrong about something, and embrace a better supported idea are to be commended, not mocked. After all, wouldn't it be truly irrational, and immoral, to let an innocent person sit in jail or sell people a drug that doesn't work? An idea is opinion if it cannot be tested using observational evidence. In other words, if two people observe the same thing but can still reasonably disagree about how to interpret the observation, then the idea is an opinion. For example, two people looking at the same magazine might disagree about which car is more beautiful. Two people hearing the same witness in a jury trial might disagree about whether they find the witness trustworthy. These are examples of opinions. However, hopefully the two people could agree about the words the witness used, the observations, even if they disagree about how trustworthy they are. Hopefully two people looking at a measuring tape along the side of a box can agree how long the box is. This is something we can see, that we can observe and therefore agree upon. Excerpt from an interview. Question. Scientists' understanding of coronavirus is constantly changing. Frequently, things that seemed true a few months ago are now known to be false. In this situation, how can we tell if something is good information or misinformation? Response. The first thing to recognize is that because the science changes, the advice that you get from health professionals changes over time as well. You'll see people saying, well, you can't trust National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases Director Anthony Fauci, because he was saying one thing in February, and he's saying something else in July. This is completely backwards. The people you can't trust are the ones who have not changed their views and advice, despite having enormously more evidence. The ones who are changing their views and advice, based on evidence, are the ones who are doing science and the ones who are giving good recommendations. From How to Evaluate COVID-19 News Without Freaking Out, an interview. Carl Bergstrom gives tips on how to make sense of pandemic news by Scott Hirschberger, August 3, 20. Quotes. As an adolescent I aspired to lasting fame, I craved factual certainty, and I thirsted for a meaningful vision of human life, so I became a scientist. This is like becoming an archbishop so you can meet girls. M. Cartmill. In science you not only have to have the stomach for failure, you actually have to enjoy the taste of it. Stuart Firestein. There are no solved problems. There are only more or less solved problems. Henri Poincaré. Slide 6. Theories can change. It is worth emphasizing that scientific theories can and do change. Isaac Newton's law of gravity lasted for over 200 years before new observations about light, electricity, and magnetism led Albert Einstein to modify it in his general theory of relativity. Charles Darwin's ideas about biological evolution are not the same as those that are held by biologists today. In Darwin's era, no one knew anything about genetics or DNA, so some of his ideas about evolution have been shown to be wrong. Others have stood the test of time as more and more evidence supporting these ideas was gathered. The modern theory of biological evolution is often called the Neo-Darwinian synthesis to acknowledge Darwin's important contributions, but also to indicate that the theory had been modified and incorporated new ideas and evidence, that Darwin was not right about everything. Of course, no human being is right about everything. It is also worth emphasizing that even though scientific theories can change owing to new observations being made, once a vast amount of evidence supports a theory, it is unlikely that the theory will be completely overturned. It is far more likely that new discoveries will result in the theory being modified or changed as in the examples above. In other words, the theory is mostly right, but needs to be fixed. In short, the discovery of new observations, new evidence, can lead us to modify, fix, or even throw out a scientific theory, but often the new evidence supports the theory. If you take a moment to think about it, you will realize that it is often far easier to prove that an idea is wrong than to prove that an idea is right. For example, if an ATM video shows that a man was on the other side of the city when someone was murdered, it demonstrates that he could not be the murderer. However, if an ATM video shows that he was near the location of the murder at the time of the murder, it is very weak evidence that he carried out the murder. Investigators would need a lot more evidence to build a case against him. You can always think of another possibility to explain away a new piece of evidence, but a single piece of evidence can show that an idea is wrong. Quote: "The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool." Richard Feynman. Slide 7. Some theories are better than other theories. Some theories are better than other theories. In The Relativity of Wrong, Isaac Asimov, a famous writer of both science fiction and science fact, put it this way: when people thought the Earth was flat, they were wrong. When people thought the Earth was spherical, they were wrong. But if you think that thinking the Earth is spherical is just as wrong as thinking the Earth is flat, then your view is wronger than both of them put together. Asimov is referring to the fact the Earth's spin causes it to bulge out near the equator, so it is not quite a sphere, but it is a whole lot closer to a sphere than a flat surface. Some theories are better than others, because they more accurately represent the natural world. The Earth is a lot closer to a sphere than a tabletop. Remember, one theory is better than another theory because it is better supported by the observations. In other words, one theory is better because it is consistent with more of the observations, and the observations cannot easily be explained in some other way. You typically hear the most about new evidence when it contradicts the prevailing theory, not when it supports it. It is not interesting news to learn that more evidence supports what you already believe. For example, if more evidence shows that the man convicted of a crime is guilty, that is not particularly newsworthy. However, if new evidence suggests that a man who has been in jail for 20 years is innocent, that clearly goes on the front page. The most interesting news is new or surprising information. U.S. Marines being accused of committing atrocities in Iraq was front-page news for days. When those same U.S. Marines were cleared of the charges, it was buried in the back pages on one day. Most news organizations also love controversy. A story is much more interesting if there are two sides that disagree. They gleefully hope that people will insult one another or throw chairs, I imagine. However, sometimes you have to look pretty hard to find two sides if there is a consensus among scientists, and therefore the news organizations sometimes make it appear that there is a controversy where there is none, at least among scientists. For example, a colleague of mine was asked to give an interview about an amateur videotape of swirling water by the shoreline. He discussed how rip currents work, and how they can be twisted into swirls by breaking waves. After him, the TV news showed an interview with a man who suggested the swirling was caused by a spinning flying saucer, UFO, just beneath the surface. My overall point is this: information can be reported or described in ways that make it appear that we should be less confident in an idea or more confident in an idea. There is always more than one way to explain a set of observations. However, some ideas are more consistent with the evidence, and more likely to be correct, than other ideas. Hypotheses, theories, predictions, and observations. A hypothesis or theory is not an observation, something that can be seen or measured. A hypothesis or theory is an explanation or interpretation of observations. A prediction is related to an observation. We predict what we think we will observe. A prediction is based on a hypothesis or theory, but is not the hypothesis or theory. A good hypothesis or theory is a. Consistent with all of the available observations, and b. Can be tested because it can be used to make predictions about what will be observed. Slide 8. Science as a human activity. It is important to remember that fallible, imperfect human beings do science, so all kinds of things can go wrong. Scientists lie, cheat, and steal like people in all other occupations. The nice thing is that when scientists make mistakes or even lie, like faking results, they are caught and corrected eventually because observational evidence is the basis of belief. Someone else can try to repeat the experiments and make the observations. For example, in 2005, scientists discovered that Drive Woo-Suk Hwang had fabricated his results on embryonic stem cell research. Because his results were so amazing, other scientists tried to reproduce them, and when they did not make the same observations as the ones that Dr. Hwang had reported, suspicions began to grow. In science, the more useful and interesting your results are, the more likely, and the more quickly, your deceit will be discovered and you will be discredited. Scientists try to keep mistaken results from being published in the first place through a process known as peer review. Just as you might have your friends read an essay before you turn it in, scientists have a formal process by which they examine one another's work. When a scientist submits an article to a scientific journal, magazine, the journal's editor will search out other scientists who are familiar with the subject matter, and ask them to evaluate the paper. The reviewers make suggestions, ask for clarifications, dispute claims, and give their overall opinion of the importance of the work. Before the editor will publish the paper, the authors must write responses to their reviewers' comments, either accepting their criticism, and changing the paper, or explaining why the reviewers are wrong. In the Internet age, this is beginning to change. More and more scientists are posting their results online without formal peer review and then modifying their work based on comments. Quote, "Our scientific power has outrun our spiritual power. We have guided missiles and misguided men." Martin Luther King, Jr. Slide 9. The limits of scientific knowledge. There are some important kinds of questions that science cannot address, cannot answer. For example, is it ever okay to steal? How do I live a good life? Who is the greatest basketball player? Which is more beautiful, a sunset or a baby's smile? I do not think observations can be used to answer these questions definitively, to come to a conclusion about them. I am not trying to say that you cannot answer these questions. You can make arguments and attempt to answer them. For example, one person might argue that stealing food is okay if you are starving. Another might say that stealing is okay if you really need it and if the other person has so much stuff that they won't really miss what you steal. Another might say it is okay to steal if everyone is doing it. Perhaps they might use this argument to justify cheating on their taxes. But how can observational evidence help you demonstrate that any of these arguments are correct? Science falls short when it comes to questions of morality and ethics, determining how to tell right actions from wrong ones. That being said, science can provide useful information. For example, science can help us determine the likelihood of developing lung cancer if you smoke. This, however, does not mean it is wrong to smoke. Science can help us understand the consequences of our choices, but does not tell us which consequence is the best one. Science can help us understand how embryos develop in the womb, how many cells they consist of after a certain number of weeks, when organs form like hearts and nervous tissue, and so on. Perhaps some people will find this useful in determining when or if they believe it is ethical to have an abortion. At least many people use this kind of information to support their point of view. But how do you determine whether it is ethically right or wrong using these kinds of observations? Science also falls short when trying to determine what is best. Science can help us figure out which foods are healthiest, and how much of certain foods we can or should eat if we wish to remain healthy. For example, we have learned that most people need to eat more fruits and vegetables and less meat in the United States if they wish to remain healthy. But who is to say that the healthy diet is the best choice for everyone? Perhaps people like eating some foods so much that they are willing to trade health and lifespan for enjoyment. In other words, who wants to live to be 120 years old if it means having to eat only nuts and raw greens and never being able to eat bacon? Some would. Some would not. Or consider where we should place our resources for health care. We have only a limited amount of money to devote to health care. If we use the money for one thing, there will be less money for another thing. Which services should be emphasized, preventing death at all costs or those that maximize the number of years of life for the most people? We may be able to spend enormous amounts of money to keep a 90-year-old alive after a heart attack but then fail to make sure every child gets regular checkups and vaccinations. What is the best use of our resources? What should we prioritize? How do you judge it? Similarly, we have to decide how to use resources to fund government services. How do we determine how much money should go into policing and how much should be used for social services like providing excellent education for all children, health care, and affordable housing? The social services may help reduce crime and other situations that lead to the need for police services. Observational evidence can definitely help us decide. Data collected about crime rates based on different policing tactics, educational outcomes, and employment based on school funding and teacher training, and other kinds of data can and should influence our decisions. But it is unlikely that the science will help us arrive at an exact dollar amount or percentage because different people will value different things more highly. In other words, one person might prefer fewer burglaries while another might prefer to see more people have access to health care. They think one thing is more important than the other. In short, I think science cannot provide all the information we need to live our lives. We need to draw upon additional sources of information like philosophy and religion to determine right from wrong, to find our values, to figure out what is the best action to take. Science and observational evidence can help us answer many such questions but cannot address these questions completely, because science limits itself to interpreting observational evidence. Morality and values require something beyond science. Slide 10. Science and religion. Before we begin addressing scientific theories about origins in the next unit, I want to address a common misconception in our culture, the idea that science and religion conflict with one another, and that you need to choose between them. I do not think that this is necessarily true. In other words, I do not think you need to choose between believing in science or your religious tradition. More than anything, science is about explaining how the world works. Unlike religion, science cannot address why we and the world are here, our purpose, ethics, beauty, and many other subjects. So, the only place science and religion can really conflict is where they both attempt to explain how the natural world works. Interestingly, the origins of modern science can be found in religious traditions and scholarship. Many scholars of the past, and those of the present, believed that the good God of the Judeo-Christian Islamic tradition created an ordered world that could be understood by his greatest creation, we humans. In other words, the reason that they believed that nature had laws which could be discovered, the reason they attempted to do science, is because they believed in a good and rational God who created nature. They considered studying the creation to be a pious act, what Galileo famously called studying the book of nature. In short, they could learn more about the Creator by studying the creation. The idea is that God wrote two books, the Book of Revelation and the Book of Nature. The Book of Nature is the natural world, something that most religious traditions can agree upon. The Book of Revelation varies from religious tradition to religious tradition. Christians look to the Bible, Jews to the Tanakh, Muslims to the Quran, Buddhists to sutras, and so on. In this view, both Book of Nature and the Book of Revelation are sources of information about the divine. Science and observational evidence do not necessarily reject or disprove religion, but they do affect religion, because they affect how sacred texts and experiences of the divine are interpreted. In the past, most people thought that the Bible clearly stated that the sun goes around the earth. They noted that the Bible says that the sun stopped orbiting the earth and remained still in the sky during the Battle of Jericho. Many devout people now think those same verses should not be interpreted literally. They are merely written in everyday language, not scientific language, because few people thousands of years ago would have understood how stopping the rotation of the earth would have stopped the motion of the sun across the sky. Imagine going to a religious service thousands of years ago and hearing, "And so God stopped the earth, and so the sun hung in the sky." Most listeners would become confused, focusing on stopping the earth and missing the point of the story. This is an example of a change in the interpretation of a religious text, something that is disturbing to some people of faith, because they, like many before them, are convinced that they have the one, true understanding of how the world works, that they possess the key to correctly interpreting sacred texts and experiences. Like many religious people, scientists do not like to change their beliefs, their interpretations of the observations, but good scientists know that they may have to change their minds if the evidence goes against them. Both religious people and scientists, and religious people who are scientists, try to come to the best conclusions they can based on the evidence they have at the time. Complicating matters, though, religious people and traditions accept evidence like experiences during prayer and meditation, visions, dreams, and so forth that would be unacceptable to scientists doing science, because they are not observational evidence, they cannot be verified by others. At least we do not know how to do so yet. People throughout the world report experiences of the divine, whether Christians or Muslims, Buddhists or animists. Unfortunately, their experiences differ radically, as do their interpretations of these experiences, making it very difficult to determine who, if anyone, is correct based on this non-observational evidence. Typically, the strongest objections that religious people make to scientific theories involve the biological theory of evolution. If you interpret Genesis 1 and 2 literally instead of allegorically, then the scientific theory and your religious views do conflict with one another. In this case, your religious views also conflict with several other scientific theories: the Big Bang, the theory of plate tectonics, and more that are well supported by many diverse observations and cannot be easily separated from principles that underlie modern technology. It is worth noting, though, that many people of faith and faith traditions have no problem with science and scientific theories about origins. For example, in July 2004 the official position of the Catholic Church was updated by the International Theological Commission, headed by Cardinal Ratzinger, who later became Pope Benedict XVI. They wrote, "According to the widely accepted scientific account, the universe erupted 15 billion years ago in an explosion called the Big Bang and has been expanding and cooling ever since. Later there gradually emerged the conditions necessary for the formation of atoms, still later the condensation of galaxies and stars, and about 10 billion years later the formation of planets. In our own solar system and on Earth, formed about 4.5 billion years ago, the conditions have been favorable to the emergence of life. While there is little consensus among scientists about how the origin of this first microscopic life is to be explained, there is general agreement among them that the first organism dwelt on this planet about 3.5 to 4 billion years ago. Since it has been demonstrated that all living organisms on Earth are genetically related, it is virtually certain that all living organisms have descended from this first organism. Converging evidence from many studies in the physical and biological sciences furnishes mounting support for some theory of evolution to account for the development and diversification of life on Earth, while controversy continues over the pace and mechanisms of evolution." This statement was a pretty accurate description of the understanding of modern science at the time it was written. In short, the idea is that God is the primary cause of everything, but God has apparently chosen to use secondary causes, the laws of nature, to carry out his will. This point of view is consistent with those of many early theologians, like St. Augustine, and early scientists, like Isaac Newton, who believed that God created the laws of nature and used them to create the world and uses them to sustain it. Thus, there is no contradiction between the origin story in the next unit and the teachings of this religious tradition. In summary, I have argued that science and observational evidence do not necessarily reject or disprove religion. Religious traditions, texts, like the Bible, the Tanakh, and Quran, experiences, like during prayer and meditation, and so on, provide additional evidence to believers about the world. The problem is that different people seem to have very different experiences of the divine, unlike observations of the natural world which we all seem to share. This makes it difficult for all of us to agree, to come to a consensus. However, to live their life, a person needs to take into account all the evidence, both observations of the natural world and additional sources like their own experiences, when figuring out what to believe. After all, taking into account all the evidence you have and using it guide your beliefs is the most scientific thing you can possibly do. Note, I chose the Roman Catholic version of Christianity as an example because Christians make up about 1/3 of the world's population and Catholics make up about half of those Christians. Thus, in principle, well over half of all of the world's Christians do not have a problem with the idea that God used natural laws to create the earth and the process of evolution to create the human body. The Roman Catholic Church does assert that God created the human soul, though. Of course, since no one has isolated and observed souls, the substance they are made of, etc., scientists cannot say much about them.